the Associate Professor, Strategic Communication Master's Program Director of the University of Oregon. Davis earned her PhD in Mass Communication from the University of Florida, where she studied relationship formation in 3D immersive virtual environments. Her ethnographic research continues to focus on the potential uses of virtual worlds, gamification, and other emerging social media, with special interest in marginalized and vulnerable communities. Her research on embodied experience and identity among people with disabilities in virtual reality was funded through a grant from the National Science Foundation. She was also an inaugural faculty fellow for the SOJC Agora Journalism Center for Innovation and Civic Engagement, extending her work with people with Parkinson's disease who find and build support in the virtual world. So please join me in giving it up for Donna Davis.
Good evening, and I know I've got to stand still, which is not my nature. I'm one of those people that likes to walk and talk. So I am Donna Davis. My avatar, which you can barely see behind me, is Trady Felicissimo. Trady because this was in Second Life 11 years ago when everybody said, don't dare pick your own name online. That's like, just don't do it. So Trady is Trey D, as in Dr. Donna Davis. I am indeed 3D in a 3D world. And I'm very, very happy. So Felicissimo. All right, so when I talk about VR and social VR, I love to use this graphic because this is what people look at me like most of the time when I say avatar. And especially if I'm saying avatar and social VR. They're like, what's that? And oh, you must be this kind of person. But I've been working in social virtual worlds through what I'm going to now refer to as legacy social VR, which is Second Life. That was one of the very earliest forms of social VR on a screen. And I love this quote from Novak, which you probably can't see way back there, that says, cyberspace is the habitat for the imagination, the place where conscious dreaming meets subconscious dreaming, a landscape for rational magic, of mystical reason, the locus and triumph of poetry over poverty, where it can be so over it should be so. In a virtual world, we can be anything, we can do anything, and with the people that I've been working with in the virtual world have taught me year after year what we look like, where we live, what we can do is only limited by what's in here in social VR. So social virtual worlds are different from other forms of AR and VR. When I'm talking about social VR, I'm still thinking in terms of both screens and headsets. So Second Life is Linden Lab. I'll be talking a little bit about Sansar later and about High Fidelity. I have accounts in both, I've been in both, and I've been to their offices as well. But the defining features of social VR, of course, starts with presence. You feel like your body is present in a space, that you have presence in the environment, that you feel like you are there. So, and that you have the ability to interact with that environment and it responds to you. Interactivity with others, that's what makes it social. Synchronous, so that of course when you log off and you come back, you were gone but the world went on without you. Just like when we leave here tonight, you could come back tomorrow and it's still here, and maybe people were here or not, but it goes on. Represented as avatars, and that's one of the magical pieces of the work I do, is that these are people that have also taught me that, because I work with people with disabilities, one of the people that I've worked with is Shyla the super gecko. Her avatar is a little teeny tiny gecko, complete with a cape and an S on her chest. And she says, I'm a gecko because I don't want to be defined by my body, I don't want to be defined by my age, I don't want to be defined by my gender. And as a matter of fact, I can fly in the virtual world, so I deserve a cape. And at the same time, she will then remind me that for some people, walking is a superpower in this world. So what we understand about our body and our interaction with others and our interaction in this space becomes really clear from working with people in social virtual worlds. And of course, it's facilitated by a network of computers. They are more important than ever because of what's happening with programs like High Fidelity and Sansar, and what's coming on with headsets and the work that I know a lot of you are already doing in social VR as we're creating these spaces that are more accessible than they've ever been before. While I know the program today is social VR and games, in Second Life it's not a game, it's a social space. So we could log in right now, which I can't, but if I were to log in right now, I'm sure we could teleport to a concert where there'd probably be about 75 people hanging out, listening to a live person who is streaming live from his or her studio anywhere in the world. And people are hanging out and dancing and doing what people do when they are together in a social space. And the beauty of social VR is that these are also habitats that have the potential to be both utopic, where I am providing opportunity, or these platforms provide opportunity for people who may otherwise not have opportunity in the physical world. One of the things that I've heard, and let me please back up just a little bit, I refer to these as virtual worlds and physical worlds. I don't believe it's real life. Real is what happens in all worlds. So we have virtual and physical, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that when I talk about Fran in a minute. But it has the opportunity to augment our lives. It also can be dystopic when we go down the rabbit hole and we decide it's time to replace our lives with what is virtual. And of course, you cannot eat in a virtual world. You cannot care for others in a physical way, like a crying baby or a starving baby. And people have let their babies die because South Korea, a couple of years ago, was a horrible story. So there are these utopic and dystopic opportunities in social VR. And these are spaces that are growing exponentially. I'm talking about Second Life. How many of you have been in Second Life? Okay. How many of you, I'm not even going to ask. A lot of people, it's interesting how often I'll ask my students that, and they have never been. But how many of you have never been in Second Life but heard about it? Okay. And how many of you heard about it through The Office? Yeah. Which is a very dystopic narrative for Second Life. But it's still a very vibrant place. There are over 600,000 active participants in Second Life today. It's almost 16 years old. There are about 60,000 people logged in at any given time. So it's a very vibrant social virtual world. And there are, of course, it's free to access. So anybody in the world can have an account as long as you've got a machine that has enough graphics, which doesn't take a lot. I can actually run it on my 4-year-old Surface. So it doesn't take a lot to run it, and so it's easy access to a lot of people. And by the way, of course I say it's not dead. That's the other thing. It's like, what do you mean? Second Life's still around? Yes, it is. And what I like to talk about when I think about social virtual worlds, the work that I have done have been included things like working with the Mayo Clinic, where the director of digital platforms for the entire Mayo Clinic, so he runs the Mayo Clinic website, all of the digital platforms for the Mayo. They also have an account in Second Life. They have a sim in Second Life, and when they had the Dalai Lama speaking at the Mayo Clinic in Manchester, they also did a live stream in Second Life. So they created an avatar. They had amphitheater full of people from all around the world sitting in and listening. Similarly, the American Cancer Society runs a Relay for Life in Second Life every year. And it's true, from this image it might be difficult to tell, but there is a musician standing up here with a little guitar. And you can see all these people down here. This kiosk is a place where you can click on it and donate money to Relay for Life in Second Life. Relay for Life and Second Life makes about $250,000 a year from avatars, tipping musicians, and buying clothes and attending events in Second Life. It's, I think, the 14th largest relay in the world. So when you think about cities around the world that host Relay for Life and all the work that they do, Avatars in Second Life as a city would be the 14th largest in the world. So people actually give their money and are very effective as fundraisers in Second Life still. That always blows people's minds. Then there's Fran. As in the introduction, it was mentioned that I've worked with people with Parkinson's disease for about 8 years now. And Fran is just turned 83 last week, an 83-year-old woman with Parkinson's disease who I met 8 years ago. And her avatar is this adorable young little blonde thing whose son was in Second Life. And he lived in the Northeast, she was living in the Southeast, and his sister, her daughter, was living in California. And he's like, Mom, why don't we, let me create accounts for you so we can log in at night and we can hang out together. And they discovered they liked doing bumper cars and they could do all of these social things together from this very dispersed geography and share time and life together in ways that geography simply wouldn't allow. And Fran, one of the things she loves most about Second Life is to go ballroom dancing. And of course, she can log in, she can put on her ball gown, he will log in and put on his tux. He will teleport his mother to a ballroom and take her ballroom dancing. When she wakes up the next day, the fact that she went ballroom dancing is just as real as if she had gone ballroom dancing anywhere. And watching her avatar do Tai Chi, she convinced herself that she had the balance that her avatar does. I raised 2 All-American wrestlers, so I lived in gyms for a long, long time. And if you are a sports fan and you watch sports on television, you ever find yourself doing this? You know, you try so hard to get that athlete to move in a way that you know that if they could just do, it'd be better off. She was doing that with her avatar, watching her avatar do Tai Chi. She said she felt her muscles moving. She convinced herself she could step off a curb, which is a problem for people with Parkinson's, and did so. She convinced herself she could stand without the use of her lift chair for the first time in years, and did so. The power of the mind. And the other beautiful thing that Fran did is she created a social support community for people with Parkinson's in Second Life, who have met every Thursday morning for the last 8 years, and they're from all around the world. And when she turned 90, she's just turned 92, when she turned 92 years ago, several of us flew from all around the country to share her 80th birthday with her. So when we talk about social VR, and people say, oh, they're not real, or I have to feel like I get a shower when I say this, it's just a stupid cartoon. How many times I've heard that? This is not a stupid cartoon. These are real relationships. This is real love. This is real life shared with other people around the world in a way that bonds could not have been made without the virtual world. So she lives in a little teeny tiny apartment in Southern California. She's now in, just today went into hospice, so she's not going to be with us much longer. But I sat beside her and she'd log in and I'd watch her get proud and sit up straight. And she pointed at the screen and she said, that's the real me, not the me trapped inside of this broken old body. Her avatar allowed her to behave in a way that her body wouldn't let her anymore, especially in a social way. Additionally, I spent 3 years working with Tom Belstor from UC Irvine, who's a cultural anthropologist, on this National Science Foundation grant working with people with disabilities. So we saw this benefit for people with Parkinson's, and what would it mean to people with broader disabilities when they could choose their body? So we worked with a wheelchair-bound dwarf in the UK who, of course, when you create your account in Second Life, they're a tall, thin, beautiful, younger version of myself, template, avatar, and she didn't feel right because she's a dwarf. So she made her avatar small and went back to visit with the people that were her friends that she had made, and they laughed at her and told her she looked stupid. Why would you do that? So the bullying she'd experienced as a human being followed her right into the virtual world. So as you think about social VR, the things that happen in our lives here, we carry in there with us. And yet, you can stand next to a giant predator who will scare you a lot until you start talking to him and find out he just wants to hang out. So she went and got herself a little teeny tiny alligator avatar. She learned how to put clothes on it. She usually has a crawfish keychain dangling from her snout. And she went back to these people and they said, oh, you're so adorable. So they're willing to accept her little tiny alligator before they're willing to accept her as a dwarf. What does that say about us as human beings and the things we can learn from each other in social VR? So one of the people that we worked with is a 30-year-old man, Cody, who is very disabled with cerebral palsy. And you can see from his wheelchair, he has a phone mounted on the bar at the top of his wheelchair. Trying to speak is very, very, very difficult for him. His voice is very palsied. So he types with his nose, and the way he communicates with people in Second Life is through text with his nose on his phone. And he can use a mouse with his foot. So they have a pad on the floor, and he uses the mouse. One of the things he loves to do more than anything is go motorcycle riding. And he flies through Second Life wailing joyfully. And we met with Philip Rosedale at High Fidelity, and we met with Abby Alberg and the folks at Second Life to think about people like Cody when they're building these technologies. Accessibility is a real problem if you can't hold a mouse, or you can't wear a headset, or you can't use a keyboard. So thinking about universal design in social VR is one of those drums that we're banging all the time. Think about universal design and universal access. So if somebody needs to speak, they can. If somebody needs to type, they can. For the deaf woman in our community whose family never learned American Sign Language, who when she went into Second Life, found a community that would speak to her as a normal person for the first time in her life, because everything was text-based. They didn't even know she was deaf. Wow, wow. Thinking about the affordances of social VR and what that can mean to us as human beings, to our bodies, to our relationships with others are pretty profound. And I'm going to finish with a photograph that was taken in the class that I taught a couple of weeks ago, actually, on social VR. And this actually was in Sansar. And of course, I'm University of Oregon, so of course I built a duck in a spacesuit, because we are adventurers, we're explorers. And we logged in to go atlas hopping, which is what they do on Saturdays in Sansar, if you want to go experience the builds, the amazing builds that people have created in that space. And I took my students atlas hopping with the folks that go every Saturday morning. And when we logged in, this is actually Abby Alberg, the CEO of Linden Labs Avatar, so he joined us for atlas hopping that day. This is Trady, she's in Sansar and in Second Life, and the duck, of course. But on the television, when we logged in, all of the people that were hanging out in the basement in Drax's house in Sansar were standing around the basement as people will do. It was his man cave, watching television. And on the television, we were live streaming on YouTube from my cell phone in the classroom, the class. So all the avatars were hanging around in Sansar watching humans for entertainment. And the duck is looking at her human. So that was her on the television with the headset on, trying to figure out how to make this duck work. And all of the avatars enjoying watching us for entertainment. So all of this is to say, I think that, again, the opportunity is only limited by our imaginations, but as we think about social VR, think about the roles that our bodies play. Think about the roles that our activities play. Think about the roles that our words play. And think about these as opportunities that can level a playing field and provide opportunities across the globe in ways that no other social medium or platform has ever really provided for us before. Thank you.